Such a nice voice. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Today we're going to talk, I'm going to overwhelm you with information. And so it's just like, give you a bunch of information. And at the end, I'm going to have time to ask questions and things like that. So if you're watching this recording or listening to it, know that we are going to talk about all the assignments and expectations for the class. And then we're also going to talk about like what we're going to do the next classes. So the plan will be this week, we're going to meet for about an hour. And then next week, we're going to meet for about an hour. And then the winter is a little bit different because we meet, technically we have classes for 2 weeks and then we have a 2-week break for the holidays. And then we come back. And so I'll talk about what we're going to do after we come back. And so I'm going to kind of give you kind of an outline of our class. So I've got a couple of changes that I've made to the syllabus that I'm going to talk about as we go, but I want to start by talking about the assignments for the class. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me get on the right class. There we go. Okay. And I don't like that setting, and I don't like that thing. I like that. Okay. Can everybody see this? It's Moodle. It's just Moodle. Everybody see it, hopefully. Okay. So I don't know if y'all's looks different than mine, but this is what mine looks like. So I'm going to start by talking about the paper first. Wherever it is. Of course, it hides behind over here. All right. So let me start with the research paper. So I'm gonna try to be as specific as I can be. So this paper has got two different sections. There's the research part of it, and this is all on Moodle. I just pull it right off Moodle. There's the research part of it, and then there's the personal reflection section part of it. Okay. So the research part of it basically has 4 different parts to it. Okay. And then the reflection part's got 4 different questions that you're going to answer in the reflection part. All right. I would say that 4 to 6 pages would be perfect for this type of paper. It doesn't have to be more than that. 4 to 6 pages will do perfect. Will get you right where you need to be. However, I want to be really specific about one thing. This research part of the paper should have citations in it. Like it's not your thought. Like you didn't come up with the developmental stages. You didn't come up with, the issues that affect that particular stage. In other words, that's not your information. You researched that information. So when you write things down that are not your original thought, what do you have to do with it? You have to cite it. Now, why would I be bringing this up? Because I get papers still that don't have any citations in them. So as of this semester, I'm not going to read those papers anymore. I'm going to send it back to you and say, this is, an F basically until you fix it, which means in this case, you're going to have like 2 or 3 days to fix something. Because it's the last thing that we do, right? So I think it's due the last week of class or something like that, or maybe the weekend before. It's something like that. So basically what I'm going to do from here on is I'm going to look at the paper and I'm going to look for the citations. If there's no citations, I'm not even going to read it. I'm just going to send it back. Why would I do that? Because in graduate school, we need to cite stuff because it's not it's not yours. Like I wrote a dissertation, and I've had people that have used my dissertation in their studies. And if they didn't cite me, I'd be pissed off because I spent a lot of time on that. Like I worked my butt off for that research. And so when you cite something, you're basically giving people credit, right? That's all you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. The reflection part of the paper, that's not necessarily somewhere you would have to cite because that is all your thought, right? That's what are some reasons you picked this topic? What did you learn? Did your opinion change? What further study would you do? That's all you. That's your thought, right? That's your reflection. That's your original idea. You're not really citing things there. Now, I have had students in this section like list out a quote or something like that, and you would cite that. But most of the time, that's just reflection. That's just you. Okay? That's just in this section. When we're talking about the research part, you should have citations there. Now, what are you citing? For this particular assignment, you obviously have the book. I've got my book in my office binder. So, you can have a loose leaf book or an actual hard copy book or an electronic. I've got it electronically too. So the book is actually a source, right? That would be a source for you. That's great. And then you're going to pick 3 other sources apart from the book. Most time people pick articles. You can pick another book. That's fine. Articles are just a little bit easier most time. So you're gonna have a minimum of 4 sources for the paper. Okay. Second thing is, if you don't have a reference page, I'm also not going to read the paper. I'm going to send it back to you. Okay. Now, why do we need research? Why do we need to cite things? Why do we need sources? Basically, for this paper, you're going to pick out a topic, okay, that has to deal with whatever level of development you want to study. If you want to study early childhood, awesome. If you want to talk about adolescence, maybe even specifically talk about high school students. If you want to talk about older adults, any developmental stage is fine. You're just going to give real basic factors about that stage. Okay. You're going to talk about a little bit about what you learned. And then you're going to choose either a disorder or an issue that is specific to that, whatever that stage is. For example, I've had a lot of students choose older adulthood and talk about Alzheimer's or dementia. Substance abuse, actually right now, substance abuse and alcohol abuse are actually 2 things that are on the rise for older adults in America. Like when I say on the rise, like pretty steep curve rise over the last 10 years. So that would be an area, an issue. In adolescence, you could talk about, I've had people talk about eating disorders or depression or anxiety, suicidal thought. I had a student do a really good paper on, it was on adolescence and divorce. That was really super fascinating. That was good. Because the 4th part, you're going to talk about like treatment options. And that's always listed in the articles that you would usually find. Like if you're talking about someone that has depression, let's say, they're going to talk about treatment options for depression or ADHD or even dementia, even pretty much any kind of disorder or issue. There's going to be some kind of treatment. Now, why am I asking that? Because eventually we are going to be the ones treating people. We're going to be the ones working with people. So I want you guys to be able to kind of know some of the things that are out there in terms of treatment. Sometimes it's talk therapy. Sometimes it's medication. Sometimes it might be something else. There's different forms of therapy besides talk therapy that people use. So that whole research part is really where you're going to be citing things. That's where you're going to find, articles for you to use there. My suggestion about this paper would be first choose the developmental stage that you're interested in. which most people either choose something they already know a lot about or something they know nothing about. It doesn't really matter to me what you choose. Just choose the developmental stage and then go by like whatever disorder or issue that you're kind of looking at. That'll help you narrow down your search so that you're not like widely searching all over the place. Okay. Now, any questions about this?
I have a question. Is there any specific font or size that you wanted?
Yeah. So APA style, right? 7th edition is what we're going off of. Times New Roman is what I mean, that's the most safe. It's always 12 point. I don't know if 7th edition's changed any in terms of font. It's always been Times New Roman, but you can kind of look that up. If you guys ever want to cheat, like a cheat website for APA, if you go to Purdue OWL APA, like the University of Purdue OWL APA, they've got a really great page on like how to cite things, like all kinds of citations, simple citations, complex ones, how to cite quotations, how to cite just like if you sum up something, how to do a reference page, all that resources. It's got all that information. So I would always go with Times New Roman 12-point font. Also, you don't have to, and I don't know, most people don't know this, we no longer have to do 2 spaces after a colon or a sentence period. Those are just little things. That's new.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I'm assuming title page, table of contents.
Just title page is all you need.
No, okay.
You don't even need to do an abstract. You don't need to do that.
Okay.
You can if you want, but you don't need you just do a title page in a reference page.
Okay.
If you want to do a table of contents, that's great, but you don't have to. The only reason I say you don't have to, because this isn't a very long paper. Like if this is going to be 20 pages, maybe we would do something like that, but 4 or 6 pages. My suggestion also, these little 1, 2, 3, these little, areas that you're covering, I would make those my headings. If I was y'all, that's what I would do, just to keep it organized. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other question about this? Please use citations. If you don't cite it, I'm going to send it back. If you're watching this at home later today, just know that I will not read your paper. Okay. All right. And keep in mind, if y'all have questions later, I'm going to have time at the end to ask questions. I just want to go over a couple of things. I want to talk about the addendum I did to the syllabus. One of the reasons why I have an addendum is because I actually created the syllabus back in the summer, and I've made some changes. Like I wanted to do a couple of things different for this class. So I've added and taken away some things. For the research paper we just talked about, there's no changes. It's exactly what I just listed. We're going to talk about the exercises for the class. There's no change to that. What I've done also is I've added an APA exercise assignment. I'm going to go over the assignment and then let you ask questions about that. One of the things that I'm discovering for this class especially, well, first of all, is this your very first Amberton class? Anybody? I'm just curious. Yeah. Okay. How many people on the call right now has taken research methods?
I have.
Have.
Like 5 people. Okay.
Yeah.
Me too.
All right. So if you've taken research methods, this is going to be a little redundant for you, but if you've never taken it, this will hopefully be helpful for you. Okay. What I'm learning is that I feel like I want to do a better job of teaching you guys APA, like just simple, like citations and simple things, basic things that are going to help your writing, to make your writing more clear and better. And You don't have to be a great writer. I'm not a great writer. I'm really good at editing, which really writing is more about editing than it is about writing. Okay. But you guys don't have time to write something, edit it, rewrite it, rewrite it. You don't have time. That's okay. So this assignment is an APA assignment. Okay. There's two parts. The first part's going to be due to me before Christmas. So it's due before on or before December 16th. The second part is due within 2 weeks after the holiday. Okay. The first part is you're going to find an article, any article. I don't care which one. Could be an article you've already looked up for another class. I don't care. You're going to correctly create a resource page for it, right? You're going to cite it correctly on the resource page, reference page. That's the first part. Then you're going to take a direct quote from the article and correctly cite it on the same page. And then you're going to sum up another sentence or two from the article in your own words and correctly cite that. Okay. I'm not doing this to catch you doing something wrong. I'm doing this so I can help you figure out how to do it so that when you have to do it again for real, you do it right. Okay. I apologize if this seems a little elementary, but I think this will help. I think this will help you. Okay. After the holiday, you're going to do the same exact thing except for 2 articles and not just 1. Different articles. Okay. I'm actually doing this in all my classes, so y'all aren't the only ones. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Anybody have a question about this?
So basically all of this will be on the same page.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Just like you create the reference and then the quote and then your sum up, they'll all be on one page. That's right.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, if you really wanted to do part 1 and part 2 together and turn it in before the holiday, that's fine too. It doesn't matter to me when you turn it in. I just want you to turn it in. And honestly, guys, if you do this, it's a free 40 point. It's a free 80 points is what this is. It's 40 points per part. It's like I'm giving you 80 points because I'm just so nice and I'm so giving. I don't try to fail people. I'm not here to, make your life hard. I'm here to teach. That's why I do it. I mean, honestly, the grade doesn't matter to me. I know a lot of it matters to you guys, which is great. Which is fine. I just want you to learn. I just want you to get the information. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the book's pretty big. There's a lot of stuff in there. There's enough for like three semesters in there. And we're going to do it in 10 weeks. So, okay. The other thing that's on the addendum is when the actual Zoom classes will be for the rest of the semester. I made a change to that. I had to kind of shuffle some things around because Saturdays ended up being the best time to meet because of when other classes meet and my schedule and everyone else's schedule. And so I just kind of had to pick a time. So we're going to do Saturdays in the mornings. I am going to record the classes and I'll put them up later because I do know that there is another class going on right now in Frisco. And I think there's one in Garland too. So I know some people are going to miss the classes because of that. So our next class will be January 15th after the holiday. And then we'll also meet on February 5th. So basically we're meeting once a month. Now we are going to meet next week because I wanted to at least get a couple in before the holidays. So we're going to meet next week and I'll talk about what we're going to do in here in a little bit. Okay. I want to talk about the midterm and finals. Okay. I haven't looked at the whole row yet. If I've had other students from other classes. A lot of you, I think I'm having for the first time, which is fun, which is awesome. The study guides are there to help with two things. One, help you with the exam, and two, help you with your reading. So as you read through the book, you should do these study guide questions. They're all chronological, the study guide is. So basically the midterm is about the first half of the book, and the final is the second half of the book. The final is not comprehensive. It's going to cover just the second half, and the midterm will cover basically the first half. Okay. I think the midterm ends, I want to say it ends at adolescence. I think the final starts with like young adults. I think that's right. If you do the study guide, you will see that the questions on the exam are the exact same questions from the study guide, like word for word on purpose, which means you can use the study guide and the book on the exam. Doesn't bother me. That's fine. Each exam is 75 questions. There's quite a few more questions on the study guide than that, but that's there on purpose because I want to help you with the reading, kind of help you synthesize what you're doing. Okay. If you don't do the study guide, you might struggle with the exam. If you do the study guides, you won't have any struggle. You'll go right through it. You technically have 4 hours to complete the exam. Each exam will start on a Friday. It will be opened up. It's online. It opens up on a Friday and closes on a Wednesday. You can log on and off the exam and it'll save your spot and stop the time. So in other words, if I start the exam on Friday and I get 20 questions in and I'm like, I don't want to do this right now, I can log off. It'll save my spot and stop the time. When I log back in, the time will start and I pick up where I left off. When you're finished with the exam, you'll get the grade right then. It'll even tell you what you missed. And then it'll email a grade to me. And then I manually put the grade into Moodle.
Is it a timed exam? Like, do we have an hour? Okay.
Yes. You have 4 hours.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep. Sometimes people don't log off and then they come back to the exam and realize they've lost all 4 hours. Let's try not to do that. So that's the study guides. The other thing that I've put up here is a couple of different forums for students. Like the midterm study guide forum. Sometimes students like to go on the forums and say, hey, what are you guys getting for question 86 on chapter 4 or whatever? And you can talk to each other that way. Because we used to do this in class, like face-to-face. Groups of people would get their study guides together and kind of go over them. This is just a different way to do that. I've had students do Zoom calls with each other to study with each other. Because the study guides, I'm not going to lie, they're very difficult. Some of the questions are pretty straightforward, but there's a lot of questions that are application kind of questions and that kind of make you think and apply the knowledge that you're learning. And so there's a couple of them that are pretty tricky. I think doing the study guide is way harder than taking the exam personally. I think the exam will be fairly easy once you get the study guide completed. All right. Any questions about the exams? All right, let's move on. I am the greatest communicator that's ever communicated. All right, let me move over here to the exercises. In each part of your book, man, I meant to pull up my, hang on, sorry guys. I meant to pull this up. Throughout your book, there's different sections. Review, connect, and reflect sections. They're little boxes in the chapters. Some chapters have 2, some chapters have 3, and they basically are just like little side notes. Hey, let's talk about what you're learning in this section, kind of thing. And they give some questions in each box. They're review questions, and then there's a couple of connection questions, and then there's some reflection questions that you answer. For each assignment, basically, you're going to turn into me the answers from that box. Okay. You're basically going to choose 2 review, connect, reflect boxes. I would just choose the ones in the chapters that you're reading at the time. It's just easier to do that way. You can choose any 2 boxes to complete. Answer those questions in the box. Okay. And then that's what you turn into me, those answers. So it's basically like an essay kind of, it's probably more short answer than anything, because some of the questions are pretty short. Like you'll just answer like maybe 1 or 2 words or maybe a sentence. Some of the questions might be a little bit longer. Okay. You're going to turn in that first part to me. Then you're going to turn in a reflection of the assignment. So let's say, for example, I'm reading early childhood and I choose 2 of those review, connect, reflect boxes. I do the essay questions in each, and then I kind of give a reflection on what I was learning. I just put that on the forum. And then you guys will read the forum and make comments on each other's posts. It's pretty straightforward. So that's B and C here. You'll put your own forum discussion post, and then you make comments. I say make comments on at least 2 classmates. I don't really care how many you make comments on. I'm not going to go through and count that. Typically what I find is the forum discussions are really fascinating to me because of what you guys write and the reflections that you guys have, I think is really interesting. A lot of times they're personal, because this class a lot of times tends to bring out personal things from your life as you read. And why does it do that? Because you're reading information that basically tells you, in some ways, tells us why we do things the way we do them and why we did things the way we did them, maybe even growing up, or why our families did things the way they did things growing up. So a lot of times our forum discussions are reflections on that. And you might write, hey, when I was growing up, I remember this blah, 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 blah thing happened, and then this and this and this. And they're really fascinating. I think I like reading them. So I read the forums. I don't make comments on all of them, on all the discussions, but I read through them all. I think they're really fascinating. And I think it's just a good way to connect with each other too. Sometimes I do take some forum discussions and I'll pull them out and we use them in our class. Like I'll bring them up in our class and we'll talk about them too. Okay. So basically you're going to pick 2 of those boxes, the review, connect, reflect. You're going to pick 2 of those per assignment. So there's 3 assignments. That means you're going to pick how many boxes total? 6 total. 2 times 3 is 6. Okay. Inevitably, someone just does 1 box per assignment. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to send it back to you, say, try again. Okay. You're going to do 2 of those per assignment. I'm trying to get this to come up. I don't know what the deal is here. My PowerPoint's not loading for some reason. Anyway, I've got two other ways to describe it. What I've just shown you, I've got a PowerPoint slide about it, and I've got a video describing it. This exercises, which always means that sometimes this particular assignment is confusing to people, which is fine. So let's talk about it. Any question about this particular assignment?
I had a quick clarification question. The reflection that we're putting up on Moodle for people to comment on, that's not a copy and paste of what we're submitting to you, right? That's a reflection on why we chose that specific section to comment. Okay, that was.
I would love it if you did it the way you just described, but I know inevitably what a lot of people do is copy and paste what they've already written. And I know that happens, but I would rather you write something.
Okay.
That'd be awesome. And that reflection, by the way, doesn't have to be like, you're not talking about 3 paragraphs long. It doesn't have to be long, but there are times people write quite a bit. I'll just be real up front. This class does have a tendency to bring out different emotions from our past life sometimes, or growing up in childhood, or depending on what you're reading. We always have a lot of parents in here that are really fascinated about why their kids do certain things, like why their adolescent might do certain things. And we talk about that in here very openly. I'm a clinician, and I'm actively seeing clients. So I talk about that, and I bring up, client things, and we talk about that. This class has a tendency to bring up things for us, which is fine. And the reason it is I think because it starts to give us some answers sometimes. The reason why we have developmental theories to begin with is because we all, I'm assuming most of us, especially if you're going to be a clinician, you just want to know, why do people do the things they do? Why do people say the things they say? Why do they do the things they do? Is it environment? Is it culture? Is it ethnicity? Is it gender? Is it age? I mean, what I'm saying? Like, there's theories around all of those things, and certain theories take some of those areas into consideration, and some of them don't. Some theories take all of those things into consideration, and some of them don't. It just depends on the kind of theory that we're talking about. I've actually listed a synopsis of developmental theories on Moodle. Those aren't like assignments or anything. That's just for you to have. It kind of basically just breaks down especially the first part of the book, it talks a lot about developmental theories. That's just for you. And you can use that when you study for your licensing exam too. It's probably good information for you to have. And so I've kind of listed that there, but developmental theories are just exactly that. They're theories about how we develop. Freud had a theory. Piaget's had a theory. Erickson's had a theory. Vygotsky's had a theory. There's new theories out there that we don't cover in the book, but there's, is it because we're socialized in a certain way? That particular one is big. Nature versus nurture. Those competing ideas are still around. Can our DNA be changed because of our environment? Do certain parts of our DNA get triggered because of our environment? When I say environment, I'm talking about like our environment, right? Like not just like my house. I'm talking about our world, the place that we live in, the family we're around, the friends we're around, all of that, right? We'll talk about a lot of that. And so that because we talk about some of those things, this class has a tendency to raise up some emotions sometimes. They're not necessarily always bad either. Sometimes they're positive, but sometimes they're a little awkward. I'm just telling you, and it's okay. Emotions they're not in charge of us, that we just feel them. They give us information. It's just data. We need to know it, and we don't need to shove it down and act like it's not there. And we're going to talk about that too. Okay. All right. I've talked about the paper. Talked about that. Exercises. Okay. I've got a document here on Moodle that is like all the due dates of everything. This is probably because this is how my brain thinks. Like I can't look at that Moodle, all of that, and be like, oh my gosh, it overwhelms me. And I just write it down anyway. So I basically wrote it down for you. You can do it however you want. The first part A, the first exercise is due next Saturday. right? And you're going to do how many review, reflect, connect boxes? 2. Please do 2. Awesome. It's very straightforward too. Just answer the questions in the box. That's all you're doing. That's all. That's it. The forum discussion or the reflection post and then your comments on the forum, you'll basically have between Saturday and I think Thursday, because we technically can't give you guys any assignments after the 16th. Which why would I want to do that? Because then I'd have to grade it. I'm not doing that. Okay. So you'll have till December 16th to do the forum discussion. Typically you have about a week between when you turn something into me and then doing the forum discussion. And as you can see, there's basically an exercise due once a month. So the first one's December 11th. The second one's January 8th. The third one's February 5th. Some students just do them all at one time. And that's fine too. Doesn't matter to me how you do it. So I've listed all the dates for everything, all the exercises, when the papers due, when the exams are. And then here at the bottom, I've listed when the Zoom classes are going to be. And I'll put a Moodle link up on Moodle so you can, or a Zoom link on Moodle so you can jump to it just like today. And you'll get an announcement or an email or something as a reminder too. All right. I think that's basically it. Has anybody opened up the syllabus?
Yeah.
Does it say spring?
It does say winter. It does say winter. However, I did notice that some days say October as
Yeah.
opposed to winter days.
Yeah, I think that I don't load the syllabus. Someone else does, and I think they loaded the wrong one.
The one I have that I downloaded just now is spring 2021.
Yeah, that's not right. I don't know why it's on there. I didn't put it up there.
Yeah.
So that's another reason to go by the due dates that I've listed. I'm not sure why that's there. I'm gonna see if I can get it changed, but I'll have to talk to Anna and get a new one put up.
I did notice that on the due dates document that you had, we don't have the due dates for the APA exercises. And I see in Moodle like the due date for APA exercise part 1.
Yeah. I just put that's because I just did that yesterday. So I didn't put it
Gotcha.
in the due dates. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I don't actually I'll update that. I'll put that on there. Got it. Cool. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me get rid of that. Get rid of that. Okay. Now, before I move on, you guys have any questions about anything we've talked about, or it could be any question. Well, not anything, but about the assignments.
So I have a question. Next week is an actual class where we're going to learn or go over content, or is kind of like a logistics class like this one?
No, it's going to be all learning stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Next week, we're going to talk about, I call it an introduction, but it's going to be a lot more discussion oriented. So we're going to do some group work. We're going to break up into groups and have a couple of discussions. But we're going to start talking about a couple of things like the book, the way the book is organized. When you go through the developmental stages, he's done a really good job of talking about development from a cognitive standpoint, biological or physical, and then socio-emotional. So your social and your emotional. He does a really good job of kind of breaking it down every stage. And so we're going to talk about that and why that's important. And then we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about, I'm going to start talking about childhood, like things in childhood, in terms of like clinically speaking. So every time that we have a class, I'm not going to pull up PowerPoints or read PowerPoints or read the book. I'm going to be talking about like clinical application. Like, how do you apply this stuff in real life? Like, why are we doing this? Like, what's the big deal about this? Personally, this is my favorite class because knowing how we develop is really important. So we have a couple of things that are happening to us all the time, from the time we're born until we die. We're always in a process of development. Sometimes that process is stymied or stuck. Sometimes we're moving along that process, and we're going to talk about things like that. The other thing that's important about this is when we work with people, it's really important to know or kind of have an idea about, okay, they're at this stage of development. So I kind of know some things about that stage of development. Just because we know things research-wise that tell us that between the ages of about 12 or 13 until around 25, our brains are really going through a lot of crazy stuff. Well, why do we need to know that? It's because if we don't know that, then we don't know why they do the things they do and make decisions the way they do, or not make decisions the way they do. Honestly, if we think about it, we make them make decisions about things that are going to affect them the rest of their life. And some of them aren't ready to make those decisions. I mean, if we're being honest. So our brain, our prefrontal is not even fully developed until we're around 25, roughly. Some people a little bit earlier, some people a little bit later, but on average, it's about 25. Well, the prefrontal is a little bit important because that helps us make decisions. That helps our moral choices, our decisions. It's a filter system. It's like a way to organize our thoughts and our life. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen. So we're going to talk about all that. When we start talking about childhood next week, the way I usually handle it is from one of the biggest areas of clinical practice is from a parenting perspective, because that's most of the time, if you're working with people, whether you're working with kids or adolescents or adults, parenting is a big area of concern. And I'm not calling it an issue. It's just a big area. And so we'll talk about it, like different types of parenting or different styles of parenting. We'll talk about like what it looks like clinically when certain things are brought to you and how you would think about it. And then we'll talk about like, hey, when kids are, 6, what are they like developmentally versus 12 or 10, or, we'll kind of talk about things like that too. So the next class moving on, it won't be like today. I just want to kind of go over and introduce the material and my expectations. But from now on, it's going to be hopefully super practical. And that means we'll have open discussions. Like you guys can ask me questions. I can ask you questions. We can talk about things very openly. The other thing that tends to happen in this class is there's research that I might present that some people think, oh, that sounds weird. And we can talk about it. That's fine. Parenting styles in general tend to make people really nervous for some reason when we talk about them. I don't talk about, hey, this is what you should do. I'm just presenting what we know. That's all. So we'll get real practical starting next week. So that's really long answer to a really short question, but I would just expect for me to give long answers. So that's probably going to happen.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if I saw it there, but when we
you cut out.
Can you hear me? My internet connection was weak for a second.
Now I got you.
Okay. When we turn in assignments, do they all need to be Word docs?
Yeah.
Okay. And one other question. The APA, the first exercise is due December 16th.
Yes.
What was the date of the second one? Or did we have 3?
No, it's just 2. It's within 2 weeks of when we get back. I don't know if I put it in Moodle, but
Yeah, I didn't see a date for it. I'm just, okay. All right, and that was it.
got it.
Thank you.
I'll put it in there. I'll update that. All right. Okay, here's my question. Besides the fact that you have to take this class, just set that to the side for a second. What kind of things are you guys expecting, or what are you hoping for? Or what about this class are you kind of like maybe excited about? It's just an open question. I'm just curious.
Well, I teach elementary school, so I think it'll be very helpful. I've taken natural child development before for my bachelor's, so I remember a lot from that. But I know it's really going to help me with certain behaviors in the classroom.
Like what kind of behaviors you think?
Well, I'm most interested in ADHD. Also, my 19-year-old son has ADHD and anxiety, so I know as a parent side, and just how hard it is for those students in the classroom, how elementary is just structured. It's really just difficult for kids that have different brain functioning. ADHD kids definitely have different brain functioning.
Yep.
And just how the system's set up, it's really difficult for them, for just a way for me to help those students more, especially when parents don't want to do medication. Because I can understand, I teach 2nd grade, so I can understand, even when my son was diagnosed early, it was like we were on the fence about medication too, because they're amphetamines if you look at the structure of the drugs. So it's scary for parents, but also the kid has to be able to function in the classroom too.
Yeah. Yeah. Classrooms are really difficult for boys in general. They're really good for girls. Just the way they're structured. And that's not a knock. That's just,
I agree.
especially
Gender matters.
does.
I've taught for 16 years and I did preschool before that. So there's
Yeah.
a difference.
And it's not a knock. It's just the way it is. And ADHD is a very specific kind of disorder that's very misunderstood. So we'll talk about it pretty specifically. That's good.
I can share. I teach yoga, and I've been doing some work with kids with disability and some work with kids with trauma. And I finally got around to enrolling in this program. I'm very interested in pursuing research on how trauma can be accessed through body movement, and getting a better understanding on what is normal in different stages of development. It's a good starting point. It's a very important parameter to then compare, okay, I have this individual with this pattern of behavior. How much of this is age-related? How much of this may be from the environment that they were exposed to, or the trauma and then again compare how is it that whatever we're doing to try to work with that is helping or not.
Yeah, that's good.
What to expect as the person progresses age-wise.
Yeah.
I do have an added interest. Also, my older one has ADHD label.
Yeah.
And I got my own theories on how much of that is actually a valid diagnosis and how much of that is because of past life experience as a kid of divorce. Anyway, so I'm also interested in looking at that.
Yeah, there's a couple of thoughts about it. The first thing, I was looking for a book, and I can't find it. There it is. So if you really want to dive in and jump headfirst into trauma, and
Mhm.
this is the foremost expert in trauma care, and I was privileged to do a conference with him, and this book is deep and it's not easy, but it's
Mhm.
the manual for trauma treatment.
I love this book.
Yeah.
I've been working with that book.
Yeah, it's very good. So
Very deep, yeah.
yeah, so there's a lot of really good things in here. There's a couple other ones I could point out. Let me say something too about well, like ADHD specifically. We're going to talk about developmental areas, but we're also going to talk about like when we start talking about ADHD, we need to start thinking about it in terms of like executive functioning, because that's really what it's about. Not necessarily like something wrong with someone's brain. It's really more about like, this is where their brain works. And if that's true of ADHD, that's also true of other things. So we also need to get our heads around the fact that, for example, if someone has, let's say, even a bipolar disorder or depression or anxiety, it's not that person's bipolar, it's that they have that. Or that person's depressed. No, they're dealing with depression. And I know that's semantics, but those semantics matter a lot. How we talk about it matters. My son has ADHD, and we're very careful about, that's ADHD. That's just part of him. That's not who he is. That's just like his brain works a certain way. And we have to figure out, because Kelly, to your point, we battle medication. He hates it. We're trying a new one right now that he's probably not going to stay on. But if he gets off of it, that means these other things have to happen. And so, which things that he might not like. I will say this, there are some new studies that are coming out. They're going to continue to come out that basically one thing is these have made everyone have attention deficit. Everybody. So adults pick up their devices between 15 and 45 times an hour. Adults. I'm not talking about teenagers. I'm talking about adults. So, and we're going to talk about that too. We're going to talk about screens and things like that. So we're going to jump into that stuff too. That's always controversial. And sometimes people hear me say I'm like I'm not anti anything. We're on a screen right now. I'm not anti, but it just means we have to adjust. This is kind of if we were talking about it evolutionary wise, we're in a different period of evolutionary development right now because of our virtual world. So we just have to, make some adjustments to it. But we're going to talk about all of that for sure. All right. Any other expectations or things that you're curious about or want to talk more about?
I don't know about expectations. I'm a youth minister for 21 years. So I work with 11-year-old to 18-year-old pretty primarily. And so I'm intrigued by the way the adolescent brain works and develops, and try to be kind of a sponge for any information on that stuff. So I'm excited for the class, but excited for the adolescent portion especially. So
yeah, that's good. I was a youth pastor for 12 years before I did this.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I've worked with teens and families for 25 years. And there's a few things that have not changed at all, but there's a lot of things that have changed drastically in 25 years.
Oh yeah. I mean, just in the last 5 to 7 things are kind of, you mentioned the phone. Yeah. There's been an uptick in a lot of stuff recently.
Yeah. 2007 is kind of the mark, because that's when the iPhone came out.
Yeah.
So from 2007 on, everyone born after that is in another, like, we don't have an information problem. Like you guys can, anything that I'm talking about right now, like I could bring up something and you could Google it and find 12 references to either combat what I'm saying or support what I'm saying, right? You could do it right now. And I wouldn't know, I'm just talking. So that means as therapists or counselors, we have to be mindful of that, our culture, but we also have to be mindful of how people develop, because the developmental stuff really hasn't changed that much from when we first started studying it about 200 years ago or so. Like, it hasn't changed a ton. However, our behaviors have changed for sure, and our brains are changing a bit. So we have to be mindful of all those things, but there's a reason why we kind of start with thinking through like the theory of development, like what, and you guys will, if you read a certain theory, you might resonate with it. Like it might meet, like you might like be like, hey, this theory makes sense to me. Like I'm an attachment theorist. Attachment theory makes a ton of sense to me. And I'll probably talk about attachment theory a lot. But for other people, it might be something else. And so, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. They're just theories. They're trying to make sense of things that are really hard to make sense of from time to time. So we will spend the first, like next week, talking about childhood. Probably our second class will be a lot of adolescent, and then our last class will be a lot of adulthood. Roughly, that's kind of what we'll focus on. Nicholas, I think you were going to say something.
Yes, it was kind of pretty much the same thing. I was kind of very interested in how the adolescent mind works. I work with juveniles in a jail, so it's just interesting to me how the way their criminal mind works versus, seeing a kid that's not in jail that doesn't think the same way that they do. So
Yeah.
And how they develop different, or they mature faster. So
yeah, and you're talking about something that's also culturally driven in some ways, but also there is a difference between, just like there's a difference between maybe a juvenile, like an adolescent in juvenile detention versus one that's not. There's differences, obviously, but there's also differences in someone that grew up maybe in a very rural community without, much access to a lot of things versus someone that grew up in a city that could do anything anytime. There's differences in all of those things. Developmentally speaking, it's not much different, but the culture and the environment around them might be different. And so sometimes it's understanding that makes a big difference too. And then talking about that, we'll talk about, and when I'm using the word culture to mean like ethnicity, gender, like environment, I'm talking about it like, there's big culture, and then we have cultures within a culture. We'll talk about all of those. Like just the adolescent world is kind of its own little culture, its own little tribe. Like they have their own little, thing. Middle school is really tough. It's kind of like the most awkward, worst part of life almost in some ways. And high school is a little bit better, and then college is a little bit better. But we'll talk about some of those things. If you guys are super interested in the adolescent stuff, there's a really good book called Brainstorm. It's probably the best. I don't know. It's probably one of the best well-researched books I know of the teen brain. And then I've got a really good video on Moodle from a research center in England that's done a lot of really good research in the adolescent world. And this particular one's just on empathy and perspective taking, which is kind of fascinating. You can check that out too. Okay, now, so next week, we're going to actually talk about stuff. It's going to be about an hour, roughly. And then, then we'll have a break for a couple of weeks, and then we'll meet back up. I think whatever it was, the 15th or 16th of January. Talk adolescence then, and then the last class will be more adult. The classes in January and February are 2 hours. Those are going to be 2 hours. So it'll go by fast. We'll have to do some group work and discussion and things like that. I'm going to send out an email or a Moodle message today with my cell phone on it and my work email address. That's probably the quickest way to get a hold of me. If you ever need to text me or anything, that's fine. You can text me off my cell. Just tell me who you are and what class you're in. I've got 100 students, so I don't keep track of everybody. If something comes up or if you need help or anything, the work email is probably a pretty quick way to get a hold of me. I usually get back to folks with that pretty quick. The Moodle messages takes a little bit longer a lot of times. So I check those once a day, but I don't always get to everybody like within 24 hours. So that's probably the slowest way to get a hold of me. I can't think of anything else. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it.
I had a question.
Yeah.
What about attendance? Because I was kind of worried I got here a little late today.
Oh, attendance.
Yeah.
So I was going to make attendance mandatory, but I can't because there's other classes going on at the time that this class is going on. So I didn't do that.
Mhm.
I can't make people come. I can tell you that with all the students that I have, the ones that show up get the most out of the class and tend to really like the class versus some that never show up and maybe watch it, but just do the assignments. It's really up to you. The classes themselves, these classes are application practical things that we're going to talk about, not like just bogged down in theory. We're going to talk about how to apply them. And so I try to make them a little bit more, not entertaining, but more informational and more helpful and really focus on like clinical things. Because I'm going to talk a lot about some of my experiences clinically and other people's experiences. And so it's not mandatory, but I think it's helpful. And I like it when people show up because it makes the class better. Because I like everyone's perspective. We're going to have all experiences in here, a lot of different perspectives. And I think that's great. That helps us. I don't want just a bunch of my perspectives. I want all perspectives. That's what makes the class good to me. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Okay. Now you guys can go do something else. I don't care what you do. It's Saturday. You can go take a nap. You can go, I don't know, walk around, something. I'm going to go make Christmas cookies.
Nice. I'm gonna go mow the lawn.
Go mow the lawn. It's December. You should be mowing the lawn in December. It makes no sense.
Better than raking the leaves.
Oh man, I hate raking leaves. I hate it. Hey, is this anybody? I'm just curious. Is this anybody's very first Amberton class?
It is for me.
Okay.
It's my second. So pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. Have a good weekend, and I'll see y'all next week.
Thank
So
you.
what time- will class be at 9:30 Saturday?
Yeah. Same time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thanks,
Have a
guys.
good week.